All right, this video is about another book by Byung-Chul, The Transparency Society. Transparency Society. And this book, just like the previous book that I talked about, The Burnout Society, was translated by Erik Butler, published in the same year, 2015, by Stanford University Press. This book, this is an important and useful book for understanding the consequences of wanting absolute transparency, absolute unconditional transparency in any domain, personal life, relationships, work, business, or politics. The main lesson of the book is that when you seek complete access to any of these domains, complete total informational access, you're not just changing your position with respect to that domain. It is not about simply knowing more about a domain. You're changing that domain. You're transforming it. You're changing what you're making transparent. That's I believe, the main lesson of the book. And that applies to ourselves as much as it applies to the objects of our knowledge, the things that we deal with, the objects and domains and relationships. It also applies to ourselves and our desire to make ourselves more transparent, to be better participants in this type of society. Transparency and the desire for it might seem, at first at least, that they might seem like good things. But if we think more carefully, the desire involves removing or putting out of play some of the cherished, valuable qualities of human life. Like what? Transparency means removing distance. It means removing ambiguity. It means removing the need for trust. It doesn't mean the ability to trust. When things become transparent to us, it doesn't mean that we can now trust them. It means that we don't need trust anymore. Trust is put out of play. So trust is something that is a factor before transparency. We need to trust, or we might fail to trust. But it starts to become irrelevant in this type of society because it has a different logic. Let's just consider distance. Distance can be a sign of respect. You cannot show respect without recognizing and maintaining some kind of distance. You respect a person, and part of that respect has to do with the distance in the relationship, the distance that you recognize and maintain. That distance itself is part of that respect. You respect the craft, not just so it doesn't just apply to people and relationships. It might apply to our relationships with a craft, a skill, a domain of expertise. And you can respect that, you can respect the craft by acknowledging a different kind of distance. You say, I'm not there yet. I'm not where I want to be there. I'm not where I want to be yet at this point. And that means recognizing the path for getting there, step by step. So it's a way of thinking about things that you can get good at, things that you can work on. When you like someone romantically or otherwise, when you like a person, you enter into a path of potentially being intimate with them. So you enter into a path. It's not immediate, but it's something that is potentially in the horizon now. When you like a field of work, you enter into a path of potentially being good at that skill, or being good in that field of work. You enter into that path. But that logic of starting a journey on a road, not immediate, not getting there immediately, but starting a kind of participation at level one from the bottom. That the logic is completely ignored in the transparency society. So, for example, when you think about books in the market, the most complicated books in the transparent society, according to the logic of transparency, the most complicated book can be now summarized into a 20-minute presentation. Entire libraries are summarized. See here the distance that used to be there, the time we used to acknowledge that it takes time to read War and Peace. It takes time to read Being and Time. But now summaries are there. You can watch a YouTube video. That's why I almost never put a word summary in the title of my videos, because I'm not interested in summarizing a book and removing a distance between readers and books. The best I can do is to flesh out that distance and talk about the worthiness, why it is worthwhile to enter into a path. By the way, I have a video that is about paths and roads, where I talk about Milan Kundera, just a short passage, a couple of paragraphs from a book by Milan Kundera. And you can check it out. It connects really well to this discussion, to present discussion. Okay, so we talked about distance. Now let's touch on ambiguity a little bit. It's related. Ambiguity is also another important feature in some important human experiences, like the experience of seduction, like appreciation of art, like going through a narrative, a drama. Any experience with so-called theatrical qualities, and theater features a lot in this in the arguments of Han in this book. Any experience with theatrical qualities runs counter to the logic of the transparent society, where some things are hidden at first and then they are revealed through an interplay between revelation and concealment, light and darkness. And that's what art is about. That's what theater is about. Transparency is not about light, because light keeps shadow in view. Light acknowledges darkness, which sets its limits. But transparency doesn't set any limits for itself. That's why it is destructive and dangerous. It is an aggressive radiation. It operates like a radiating force that flattens everything. All identities, all relationships, all ambiguity. At least it expresses a desire for that. Desire for removing ambiguities, distance, identity, ambiguity, and so forth. Art in general has no place in the transparency society. The demand for transparency takes beauty and transforms it into pornography. And that is the only type of experience of beauty that is permitted into its framework. There's a lot more we can say about this short and very, I believe, useful, helpful book, The Transparency Society, but I'll end my presentation here. And if you have any thoughts, let me know. The next book in this series will be The Agony of Eros. If you'd like to join me, you can get a hold of a copy. And this was my entry point into Byung-Chul Han, and I'll talk about that history in the next video. All for now, till next time.